Well, hi everyone. Thanks for joining and sticking around as we got everyone from the waiting room into this space. So this session is all about virtual fundraising. My name is Katie Stiles. I work at Loyola Marymount University. We have just over 200 RSOs. This semester we have been entirely virtual. So I feel like I kind of had a crash course in what does virtual fundraising look like, what works, what maybe doesn't. But when I was thinking about contributing to today's summit, and what are some things that I would like to walk away with? Something that I came back to pretty quickly was wanting to know more about what other campuses are doing in terms of virtual fundraising and really what works. And I know that it's kind of a moving target because campus operations vary a lot from campus to campus, as well as existing financial structures. But my goal is that we all walk away with possibly a couple of ideas that we can implement at our campus. So for those of, if you've just joined us the last couple minutes, feel free to put your name, pronouns, position, and institution in the chat. And this is being recorded for not only our use, but also for the summit participants that aren't able to join us. So first, and I'm going to kind of kick us off with a bit of a broad question. I'm curious to see what ideas at your campus, be it with student organizations or other campus entities at your institution, what are some of the things that you all have done this semester or really any time in 2020 that has worked in terms of fundraising? It could be something big, small, whatever. If it helped raise funds, I think that might be a good place to start. If for whatever reason in your current environment you're not able to like turn your mic on, feel free to also ask these questions or respond to the questions.
Thank you. You understood what I was saying about the thing. It was hard in that little thing. But yeah, no, there's actually a button for extra long. I can put extra.
We've introduced our EMarketplace, which student organizations didn't necessarily have the opportunity to do previously. And so a few of our organizations have really taken advantage of that I think one group did like some sort of an auction, but that introduction to the EMarketplace has definitely been helpful for them.
Can you provide, because this is actually something I'm looking into for our student organizations. Can you, I guess, provide just like a brief description of what the marketplace,
yes,
how it functions, what it looks like, any additional information?
Yeah, sure. It's brand new to me too, so I will definitely do my best.
No worries.
But I think Alexa also said like apparel and item sales. So it was introduced to us through our Associated Students Incorporated when they did brick sales. When we redid our new student union, they had bricks in front that, you could have like your name on them and whatnot. And so it was very much like a site that was created from our business and finance in partnership with ASI, where you can go on there and do your own like self-shopping ability. And so I could go on, for example, and buy a brick, buy a shirt, and put in my information, and like Alexa said as well, direct ship to me instead of having the student organization do that. So that's as far as I know, but I do know that it got really tricky because you just have to make sure, it really depends on how your money is spent or dealt with. If it's like fully through ASI, if it has to go through foundation, business and finance, that was kind of the tricky part, to make sure that student organizations were going to be able to use that. So that conversation has to come first, but it's been really helpful.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing.
Hi, everyone. Matthew Miles, Area Coordinator in Residential Life. I also advise a fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha. And so every year we do our Miss Black and Gold pageant. And so we actually did it virtually and we did solicit ads. We do it as a fundraiser for our chapter. So the chapter actually raised about $5,000 just by selling ads and getting some of their alumni members, appealing to them to say, hey, you know, we normally couldn't do fundraising because of the pandemic. And, you know, so these are some things we still want to do from a community service standpoint. And we kind of listed out some things that we wanted to do from community service. And so, and we just kind of channeled all of our efforts, majority of this semester to the pageant, since it was virtually and a lot of the alumni members were able to watch it, and the campus body as well. So just from the girls and the brothers soliciting businesses for ads, and from our alumni members, we were able to profit about $5,000 from for our event.
That's awesome. And those ads were shown during a live program, a virtual live program.
Yeah, so we had a PowerPoint slide at the end, and we just identified, and we also made a program book for the families as well. But at the end, we had people watching. We created a slide to showcase who our vendors were and who are people that gave donations as well.
Mm-hmm. I guess I can throw an idea in, although albeit really simple. This is one of the things that I've seen work best for not only student organizations fundraising for themselves, but also off-campus service sites and local nonprofits. We've been 100% virtual this semester, and so especially on Instagram, there has been a lot of the things that we would do normally has pivoted to Instagram. Marketing is one of those things, but also we've seen fundraising really flourish on Instagram. Specifically, and again, this is just my campus, but the concept of the bingo card that you can use on your Instagram story. We actually had, you can like do a quick Google search if you want more information about this. And also I think the assets are publicly available. We had a group that had recently reactivated. They're called the Brothers of Consciousness, and they do a lot of things, but and they've kind of had ebbs and flows with activity on campus, but they re-registered in April. And essentially what they are is an organization specifically for Black men that focuses on personal and professional development. And they reactivated, and then shortly after George Floyd was killed, they started essentially a bingo card fundraiser where they had all the assets ready to go. And they said, if you're a student organization and you want to fundraise for, a cause that is connected to the Black Lives Matter movement, we want to help. And so essentially what it was, I imagine it kind of like a spider web. So they had all these assets, and they were partnering with student organizations that were partnering with different nonprofits. But ultimately, over the course of, I think, a couple of weeks, they raised $50,000. And I think they ended up being on the Today Show. Yeah, it was incredible. And I'm witnessing it all from home, and am teary with emotion, because essentially it was a student organization helping other student organizations raise funds for a cause that was near and dear to their heart. So we had some that partnered with the AJCU, Innocence Project, different chapters of the Innocence Project, the NAACP. I think ultimately they had 30 to 40 RSOs they partnered with, and I don't think any of those RSOs had the same nonprofit. So it was completely grassroots. It kind of just sprung up overnight. They were on the Today Show though, which was really cool. But all that to say, it's such a simple idea, but we've seen our dance marathon has now done a bingo card fundraiser. That's worked really well. I'm trying to think of some other ones lately that have done it. We've with the holidays coming up, we've seen some RSOs use it for sponsoring families and essentially like a social media giving tree or angel tree, if that's something that's prominent on your campus. So, so yeah, every couple of weeks, I feel like I see one, and it's all done through Venmo and Instagram, and then the money is mailed into campus. But it seems to work. And you want to talk about meeting students where they are? They're on Instagram, so for better or worse. And so that seems to be a really simple yet really effective idea.
What if we were to, because I'm like, okay, I need to know more information about this apparently. So what am I Googling? What am I searching?
Yeah, so let me do, I want to say it would be LMU BOC, like Today Show. Let me see if that, okay, so here's, and I think actually when this interview happened, it was still going. So the numbers may not be fully accurate, but there's the link. And the two students that run it are phenomenal students, as I'm sure you can imagine. But so if I can answer any questions, I'm here to help with anything, but I can also connect you with those students because this has been their big like initiative. That piece, and then essentially those student leaders are now a part of a small committee that the university president is helming about basically the Black experience of student, staff, and faculty at LMU, and there are 2 student representatives on it. So they've now taken this massive fundraising campaign. It's now turned into advocacy, which I know is not the what's at the heart of this discussion, but it's been really nice to see kind of how that, one initiative has kind of spurred into a lot of other things in light of everything that's going on. I see, so Alexa put in the chat, does anyone have a policy for Venmo listed on their website? It's not approved at our university due to possible mismanagement of funds by student collecting with tax implications if the amount is too high. I'm also curious to see if someone has that. We just say that we discourage it, but there's no actual policy. So if someone has a link, or if they can send something around, that could be really helpful too.
I'll chime in a little bit in terms of Venmo, like Venmo, PayPal, those types of things do come up. So, I mean, we get it. It's usually, if it's something like really quick where students are buying things from each other, like, in the olden days when we're all on campus, give me something by Venmo, and then it would go to a student org. But usually the idea is that once all that is done, then the idea is that the students should be responsible to write their own organization a check and deposit it in their, in this case, their ASUC accounts. And that's essentially how we would track that. So it's like, imagine if a fundraiser is going on for 3 or 4 days, a week, a month, however long, then that somebody is actually responsibly tracking all that and then depositing that in there. So that's okay for quick transactions. But if it's something bigger, like a corporation, a company, like somebody that wants to work with the nonprofit of our ASUC student government, then in that case, they can't do Venmo. They actually do have to write a check directly to ASUC/org name. So for purposes of bank transactions, it would show that it hit the ASUC's account, not a Venmo account. So that's kind of where, I mean, every now and then we do get a few students that slip through the cracks that don't quite piece that information together. But for the ones that do, we get it, but we tell them what they need to do when that sale is done.
I could, oh, go ahead.
No, go for it.
Oh, I was going to chime in a little bit. So I'm the club financial coordinator at Humboldt State University. Our campus has about a little over 6,000 students, and we're the northernmost campus in the CSU system in California. So we're definitely a little bit more remote compared to the other big cities in California. So the thing about the California system in particular is that there's a lot of rules, and we find that everybody's surprised by how many rules California schools have. And so one of them being that you can't use these third-party sites. Namely, our campus is a little different from a lot of the other CSUs because all the clubs are handled stateside and they're not managed by AS or any auxiliaries. They don't get extra funding unless they apply for a grant. So just off the bat, all the clubs, if they want to do something, they have to fundraise for it. But because of that, we've offered using our cashiering system, eMarket, to set up club stores for them. So as long as we communicate early on in the process and say, hey, you guys are going to have a fundraiser coming up. You want to sell t-shirts, hats, and water bottles. I'm going to put it up on the store for you. And then you can direct people to the site where they can pay online. And so now moving virtually, we're expanding that a little bit more so that people can buy all kinds of things. I'm also going to drop a link. This is just kind of an example. It's what we have set up. It's nothing too flashy. It's not like really cool pictures and advertisements, but it's a way that we can make sure that students can securely get the money for fundraising into their club account and ensure that it's not misappropriated. Since we are stateside, our accounting department does do the taxes on behalf of all student organizations. So it's really important that we have all the cash flows go through our system and not through a third party.
I'll speak a little bit. My chapter, the fraternity, they use CashOut, and but it is connected to their. Our university doesn't have a formal vendors, so the Cash App is connected to to the chapter's account, and so basically it just operates as the normal banking obligations of the chapter, that only the president and the treasurer has access to the account. I can see the account on the Gmail side. I can see the transactions on that. It has the to on there, so I instruct them to make sure they write, to something, or who's depositing something for, like even for the pageant, we did People's Choice, which is another way how we raised money for that. And they was able to put to the girls and whatnot, so we was able to calculate what money was going to who, and basically it's automatically deposited into the chapter's account, and then it basically operates as our normal chapter operating fund like we normally do. So our university doesn't have any restrictions on that, but I don't have a formal. I have not typed out everything, because basically since it's connected to one of the chapter's accounts, it's basically operated as they normally would function. But I'm sure I could probably type up something moving forward.
With all of the same conversations, I'm curious how easy it is for, it sounds like some organizations have access to their bank accounts whenever they want, or like can see their transactions. I'd love to know more about that. Maybe you can private chat me or anything, because our organizations have to like contact somebody to even see their balance or even see things happening with their accounts, which, makes it really difficult, and then they hate it and don't want to go through the process. So it seems like, and again, like Gina said, CSUs have a very particular set of rules that they're going with. So CSUs help. Welcome.
Hey, Julie. Yeah, I would also like to elaborate on this. So since we are using our eMarket site and students don't have regular access, they can't just like log in and see their balance. What we do have with our program is that it could send automated reports. So I don't have to go in and hit a button every week and do it. They automatically get an update. So because it's not live where they can just check in on their own time, we also encourage them to take on the role of actually being a financial manager for their club and say, okay, you're getting it's like your bank statement, but you should also, in the meantime, between getting those statements, be reconciling with your finances. And we have a template for like a shadow ledger, so they can make projections and stuff. And so I tell them, if this is something that you truly utilize and you move forward and you're actually budgeting for your club and you're not just spending willy-nilly, like put this on your transcript that you are a financial, not like an advisor, but you really understood what's going on with your club and really putting the onus on them to be responsible for their finances.
Yeah, that's huge. I'd love to create like just templates and things. There's one person that oversees those accounts, and I'd love for her to, we've said, I think student organizations want workshops on how to manage their money and whatnot. Even though they can't see it, they do need to do that side of it. So that's helpful. Well, I'll connect with you.
Yeah, I know. Definitely, like a lot of the modern student engagement softwares work, like whether your campus uses Collegiate Link or Engage, OrgSync, things like that. Those programs actually do have a financial component built into it, and that's what we've done. We've on our campus, it's CalLink, and I think most students, actually, interestingly, there's some students who don't really use CalLink for a lot of the organizational involvement features, but they really use it for the banking features quite a bit. So yeah, so technically, I think that position that Gina was saying a moment ago, yeah, like the financial agent, requester training, something like that. Yeah, that's we have that position devoted on ours. So yeah, I could definitely share more about that.
Deepak, is that the part of Engage that you have to pay for?
You know, I mean, it's kind of a package deal. I mean, I'm not sure in terms like the payment. I mean, we already have it as a subscribing campus. So I think with that, I think those are some features that they've added on. Like, I'm not sure how many other campuses have used that, but I know it's definitely a feature that we have. So not that I'm aware of if it's an additional cost, but we have it. And then, and the way how that works, like to kind of add to it, like the students don't actually have access directly like to the master bank account where all the money is, like they kind of do everything in there. But then in terms of like the administration and the finance piece, it's usually university employees that are like literally adding and removing money from the account that have access to the bank account. So yeah, it's more like a screen share if anything, but it's not the actual bank account. So
Awesome.
Yeah, that's like my one qualm with the Engage financial, because I think we got it basically came included in the package that we got. So we didn't say like, yeah, we want this, and it was like added as, you know, like an a la carte item. It just was a part of the contract. And you know, after having gone to that Engage conference, like it looks really wonderful, but it's one issue that seems to be also be the biggest issue is that it does not speak to many systems. And like I'm sure is the case at many, if not all of our campuses, the financial systems we use are very antiquated is probably the best way to put that. Like our system only runs on Internet Explorer, which when I bring that up in trainings, I always get a good giggle out of it. Like that's how I like bring the students back in. I'm like, who uses Internet Explorer? Like I don't even use Internet Explorer. But anyway, it doesn't. So all that to say, like when we were in the contract negotiation, I saw that was going to be a part of it. I was initially so excited, and then I heard that it didn't speak to our system, and we've since upgraded, and it doesn't speak to the new system either. And I thought, I don't know if we have the personnel, be it, you know, full-time staff or student staff, to like go in and record every single transaction for, you know, I mean, we just have just over 200 RSOs. So I know that there's probably campuses here that have far more than that, but that's a lot of legwork. So hopefully that might change. That might be something that they, you know, that becomes a feature eventually. So
and actually, Katie, I do have a follow-up question with that. So in terms, I don't imagine that these systems are as seamless as they sound, and I'm not trying to make it out to be. But in terms of for your system, all the funds that students have or student orgs have, are they part of the university system, like the university ecosystem of money, your department funds, or are they in a separate bank account, a separate entity when you look at it from the way the university administers it?
so they're not the term now escapes me. They're not like within like my department, student leadership and development, they're not considered in our like budgeting system as like dependents. Like they're not, you know, a line item on the SLD budget or in our account system, but they do have their own independent accounts that are housed by the university. So yeah, and this is where I'm trying to, my supervisor puts this really eloquently, but they are classified as 81 accounts versus like they start, all their accounts start with 81 and our accounts all start with 11 or 12. So how they're categorized at the university is different. And I forget exactly like how it's exactly coded. It's gonna drive me crazy. Oh wait, sorry, I just remembered. Their accounts, any account that starts with 81, be it a student organization account or another account, is actually classified as a liability account, which sounds really bad, but essentially if an RSO is in the red, they're in some type of debt, it's processed and classified differently than a department to the student organization's benefit. Also, because it's an 81, their balances are allowed to, as long as they stay active, they roll over from year to year. Whereas I don't think, I mean, our department doesn't, student government's budget doesn't. So they're housed at the university, but they operate autonomously from our actual department.
Okay, yeah, no,
Does that
that,
answer your
that makes,
question?
yeah, it does, and also
Okay.
I'll echo that also. Like for us, like the student orgs and the student government's money is not rolled into the university budget ecosystem. So hypothetically, yeah, like if like any money that the ASUC or a student org accrues, it never shows up as income in the university. It's its own 501c3 nonprofit, and that's where so that entire thing is in an off-campus account. So a lot of times, and I'll kind of stop talking after this for a minute, but a lot of times, like what would happen, I'll use this as an example. A campus department may say something like, oh, we want to sponsor an engineering or a business student organization. What is their chart string? So chart string is basically code for like the way campus departments bill each other, whether it's adding money, taking out, like that's basically how it is. So in this case, as antiquated as what I'm about to say sounds, it is the best way where we say like, oh, the student orgs don't have that. So you have to go through the system, create a check, give it to us, and then we'll deposit it in their account. So that's how like that bank account is not even connected to the university, though it is managed by business and finance folks. It's a completely separate system for this reason, to give students that level of independence. Anywho, so yeah, that's kind of how at least we did.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. That's helpful. I'm looking at the chat here. There's a lot of good stuff going on there. There was a question asked a couple of minutes ago that I'm actually really curious because to bring to the group here, because this is a question that came up for me in the last week, and that is when thinking about these third-party platforms, so be it Cash App, Venmo, or really any like other third-party platform. Does anyone have any strategies, best practices, anything that could be helpful for where to possibly start in having that conversation with other university staff about essentially getting that approved and getting it integrated? The second piece was about reimbursements, and I can bring that to the group if anyone has any helpful tips about that first question.
Katie, I can chime in about the first question. Sorry, let me turn my video on too. Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Denise Campos. I'm from St. John's University. So I don't know if this will be particularly helpful, but interestingly enough, we transitioned before I got to St. John's. They were using OrgSync and super happy with the platform, but then I think it got bought out and then became Engage, and there were some issues transitioning to it. And then the university decided to use St. John's Connect, which is essentially the Involvio platform. Involvio worked with us a lot to build like finance tools and stuff, the campus reps, and talked us through a lot of it. So it ended up being that it wasn't really a choice for us to, decide how to spend those funds. But interestingly enough, I think there's something with like Cisco, and we're a Cisco WebEx school, and they have some stake in Involvio. So I think it was like a very big financial decision for the university. So what I would say is like, there may be some, I think if you talk about the need for it, that might help maybe see like, okay, this is a thing that makes sense for the whole university to use. So now everybody's moving on to the app, not just our areas. So if there are platforms that have multiple different, facets to them that the rest of the university can get on board, I think it's a big project to advocate for, but it's something that might be worth doing.
I'm so glad that you said that, because I feel like more and more departments are using this, and I like knowing the back end of like, it feels kind of weird to go to like, an official departmental event and Venmo, whatever the entrance fee is, knowing that I know that it'll get back to the university, but knowing that for the time being, it's actually going into someone's personal Venmo and then from there into their personal bank account. Like it just feels kind of weird. So yeah, so there's definitely the demand for it in not only student organizations, but also departments. Anyone else have any feedback regarding where to start with getting the clearance and authorization to incorporate third-party platforms?
And I just threw it in the chat. Stripe has been our go-to. So, back to this idea what I was saying earlier about how as long as it's not like a university main bank account, but if it's one in this case, like the ASUC's account, their own off-campus one, then that's easy. Yeah. So, Stripe, much like, we've all probably done that. Go to a website, put in credit card information. And so the way how it does, and then we've set it up on our website with Stripe, where by default, like if I'm the credit card user, I have to go through and manually write the name of the organization to whom I want to give that money to. So like last week, Filipino Association of Health Careers, they used that quite a bit for one of their events where they routed people to the Stripe account that's on the ASUC's website, but said, please type in our name. So that's at least how, so that's on the part of the person who's hosting the fundraiser to say, this is what to do. But then administratively on our end, like, my end or my colleague's end, is that we have to go through, check in to see during the course of maybe once a week, how many donations came through and where did the donors say they wanted the money to go? And then we would route it to the fund directly. So it's not as instantaneous as people want it to be. But hypothetically, if we did nothing with that, all of those donations would just go directly to the master ASUC account. But then part of our responsibility is to divvy it out based on what the donor has written, saying where they want it to go. So I think Stripe can work. It's, Stripe or programs like that, as long as you have a way of connecting it to a bank account that doesn't need that much. I don't want to say like that doesn't need any oversight, but that doesn't require like a lot of university signatures in this case, because the account is not the university owned account, it works. So that's kind of the way.
Thank you. It's helpful. There's a, Julie said, it's so amazing how different we all are, but yet we all have the same questions, concerns, frustrations. So it is interesting. I know that there was a question also in the chat about processing reimbursements. And I know like there was some feedback put in the chat, but I wanted to see if it would be helpful to bring that question into the non-chat space, I guess, to see if anyone has any follow-up questions or content to discuss that might be helpful.
I would like to talk a little bit about that. So I did put it in the chat, but my position on campus is actually relatively new. I've only been working at HSU a little over about 1.5 years, almost coming up on 2 years, actually. There used to be nobody who would manage finances specifically. They just had other people just trying to sprinkle in some of their extra time to help with club finances. And they found out it just led to a lot of mismanagement of funds. There wasn't a lot of things that were being processed in a timely manner. So once I was brought on to campus, I really helped establish a whole new process guide on doing things. So when we were on campus, one of the things we offered were cash reimbursements. And so that was really good for students to turn around and just get their money right back. We would do it up to $300. So especially for some of these clubs where maybe they go out and buy a box of t-shirts from a local screen printing company, they can get their money back right away from their club. Now, since we're virtual, of course, we can't do that. But something that was implemented before we went virtual is that I have basically like a company credit card. We call it a pro card. And I have it linked to all the student clubs. So when we do our annual recognition process, I have a very special training for the treasurers where they actually even have to take a quiz that they acknowledge what the process is. And we highly, highly encourage them to use the pro card first before they actually ever make purchases on their own. So they don't actually ever take the card. I know there are some campuses where you could check out a credit card and use it. In this case, what they do is we have a payment request form and it can choose from a number of different types of payments. This one would be a direct payment and they just send me a link to like Amazon or whoever needs to get an invoice paid. I go on and pay it and I just forward the receipt to the club member. And if they can't do that or they don't take online payments, they can forward me the same payment request form that says I want a reimbursement instead. And we process that with our AP department. So they acknowledge, and I always point out, hey, the reimbursement is going to take some time because we have to mail you a check. You can't pick up cash. But in this case, we do have another way to combat having reimbursements be the primary role that students go to first.
Same for me here in Louisiana, Lafayette. We have a procurement card. Every employee does. So basically, we just use that card for our purchasing, long as it doesn't do tax and we're able to purchase. Most times we have to get approval for the purchases. So sometimes for my office, we would do an approval for the entire semester, like we do RA. I work in Res Life. So I have RHA, Residence Hall Association, and the RAs when they do programming. So we'll do a blanket request for the whole semester. And every month we have to audit our cards with the bank statements or whatnot. And so, so most times I'll attach the flyers and everything with that for approval, long as it meets the certain codes that has to be met. But we go over with our RAs and with RHA what the procurement rules are and what they can and can't purchase. And most times we buy the stuff for them, long as it doesn't have taxes and it matches what the university rules are, it can be purchased or whatnot. So we don't have to worry about reimbursement.
Question on that too, and for Gina as well, because it's just amazing how different we are and just how much, different process, et cetera. Because I tell student organizations, like maybe they're connected to, or even for me, like Panhellenic, right? I oversee all of our 3 councils. And so if Panhellenic needs something because they don't have, like for Panhellenic Academy, for example, I tell all organizations in general, like I cannot use a pro card for the organization because it's considered department funds, and student organizations cannot, like departments are different from student orgs are not departments. Neither can use each other's funds. So I can't purchase something for the council, even though I'm an advisor, because I work in student leadership and development, because when the reimbursement comes around, the organization's not going to get reimbursed, or I'm going to get my hand slapped, because it just doesn't work that way. Just like if sociology department has sociology student organization, sociology organization has to use their own funds and do, the whole long process, because if the department uses the funds, they get their hands slapped. And I'm like, no, you can't do that. So this is all very interesting. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, so because RHA and RAs is a departmental fund, so they get their funding from, they get their programming funds from the contracts or whatnot. So there's a programming fee attached to it. And so that's how we're able to purchase the funds and everything for that. So you are right, if it's a student organization of their own, and because here they have to be able to do it, most of the student organizations have to raise their own funds to do that, but you are right. So like when sometimes we partner with student engagement and leadership, which involves Greek life and first year experience, which is our LLCs and peer mentors. And so sometimes we take all of those students on a trip, but the procurement office will tell us to only do the students that you oversee, so to not have those departments do things. Because when we first did it, we used to have one person do it, and we would just do an interdepartmental transfer of funds back into that person. But then they told us not to do that, to only do it for the ones that you specifically oversee. So that's it's kind of be a hassle sometimes, but that's kind of what we're kind of shifting to as well.
We've got about 15 minutes left, and so I wanted to see. I mean, I definitely have some questions that I prepped for the room, but I want to see if anyone else has any questions that they were planning on asking, or hope I open the room up to see basically if there's any specific questions or anything like that you all want to bring to the room.
I would kind of like to do a self-brag on the different types of virtual fundraising that our organizations have been able to pull off. So
yeah.
Not only do we have the e-market, that one is really good if the clubs, they already had their merchandise from the past years and they're like, well, we can't sit on the quad and sell it. How are we going to move all these t-shirts? So that's a great one. Like I mentioned, since we don't get funding from AS off the bat for any of our clubs, if we have a new club, they're starting at zero. So oftentimes they have to put in their own money, but we've partnered with Custom Ink as a way to get people to kickstart their fundraising. What Custom Ink does is that they have the students upload a picture of their logo. They choose what product they want it on. So they have like shirts, water bottles, hats. They're even doing face masks and little hand sanitizer bottles, like everything you could really think of. And they will host the fundraiser on behalf of the club. Custom Ink will take off a cut to make sure that they are still reaching their profits, and all the leftover gets sent as a check directly to our office. So we deposit right to the club account. It's a great way to get those clubs started, especially if they just started new in a virtual setting. Like how daunting is that, like to make a whole new club and you have nothing to start off of. But not only that, we are pretty tight with our Advancement Foundation. So they do have an online giving site. So if they're going to have people do online donations, they are taking care of all the tax receipts that come with donations versus sales. So we do keep those separate. And then they also have allow students to utilize crowdfunding. So one of our major accomplishments is our rowing team. They had to raise like a couple $1,000 for a new boat. They got that. Our computer gaming club, they raised money to get a flight simulator installed in our library. So that was cool. They reached their goal. And so these things, of course, can be used outside of the virtual setting, and we already had the foundation for them, but we didn't implement them like full force until now. But we're really trying to push, like, here's the ways that you can engage on social media. Here's the resources that you can use. So you're not just pigeonholed into one singular way to fundraise and you don't have any access outside that. Something else that we use with our eMarket CashNet store, it's not just for selling merchandise, but if they want to do virtual programming where they charge admission, we could do something like that. We can have them pay dues there. So it's very flexible on how we can collect money for clubs. Even if they want to make a deposit and we have our campus closed virtually, we have ways for them to get on campus and still make a deposit. So that way their funds are secured.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thanks for sharing all those ideas. I'm like typing furiously. And a question for you, but also just kind of question for the room. Our alumni engagement advancement, yeah, they've recently renamed themselves. I'm not quite sure exactly what they're called, but they're very particular, stringent, not quite sure which word to use, about student organizations having gift accounts. There's really no like set criteria. I would like to develop a criteria of basically when having an online portal, an online platform for alumni and other folks to donate through would be available. But the office is, like I said, they're very stringent and they like to keep that number small. And so I'm wondering if you have any suggestions for like, do you all have a criteria that you use, or is it just automatically if you're a student org, you get one of these, you get a platform, or is this something that you had to work with Advancement on getting set up, or any other specific information about that would be super helpful to know.
Yeah, of course. So a lot of the things at HSU, there was groundwork before I came in, but like I said, there wasn't someone sole person to manage it. So what was established before is that at first when they said everything's moving stateside, at this point was probably 4 years ago, they just automatically gave an account to every club we had registered. And it was just a huge project. So obviously things have changed, clubs gone inactive, we get new clubs. And so now we're kind of doing this thing is as we get new ones, we ask them, what are your mission? What's your fundraising mission? Okay. And if they don't have one, they just say, hey, we're just here to meet. We don't bother setting one up for them. We say, cool, we're here if you need us. You know what the process is, because we make sure that everybody's trained on it. It used to be you would only do the training if you think you're going to fundraise, but then they decide to fundraise and they don't know the protocol. So we give them all the rules right up front and say, we're here to help, but you got to work with us. As far as working with Advancement goes, there was actually a business deal that was cut. And truthfully for our campus, we don't like it, but I recognize why it's necessary, where every student organization donation that comes through their site, they take 5%. So it's kind of a way for them to be incentivized to actually help the student clubs, because they're going to collect some of it. And so we do actually have a lot of clubs where they have alumni, they have people in the industry, especially up here. One of our biggest industries is the forestry industry. And our forestry club is like huge on alumni and huge on getting a lot of business support from the surrounding area. So they're all going to that site and donating. Another one is our geology club. In the past, they've done an auction where they raise thousands of dollars because they send all their students into a field project for their senior capstone. So really connecting people to businesses around the area that are already donating to the school. Advancement is kind of encouraged to continue that process, because imagine how much it would suck to say, hey, we're taking donations for our student adversity fund, but you're not allowed to give a donation to forestry, even though they're a major contributor. So working it that way and knowing that we are very tight with all of our local businesses and Advancement gets a cut of it, it kind of helps in that sense.
That's so helpful. Thank you so much.
For the institution where my fraternity is that I advise, they do have a gift giving fund for their organization. It's not really streamlined, as Gina was saying, that every organization has to have one. It was a person in the advancement office that was trying to solicit organizations to get it, but she's no longer at the university. So my chapter does have one, and anytime there are donations requested, we try to put them in that donation to raise more money for those funds. But most times people give directly to the chapter so they can have a little bit more control over what they want to do with the funds. So I am trying to help them build that account, but we do have a gift giving fund in that particular account in advancement.
Gina, thank you for dropping that link in the chat. Super helpful. I feel like I have
No
so many
problem.
tabs open from just like the whole day.
I get it. Yeah, in here, I have a lot of stuff about, I know a few people were asking about our handbook. It's available for download because we want to make sure we're as transparent with our students as possible. So any resource that we tell them in training, we put it in all the places. The platform we use is Presence. And so not only do I have all the forms and stuff on our website here, we also have it on Presence where they could download it and look at it there too. So yeah, some of these things are, I think should be up to date for COVID, except for the handbook, just because obviously I don't think we're going to make a whole handbook for virtual and then switch it the next year, but most of it is pretty applicable.
I'm curious to, oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, I would say like kind of back to this original question about like how do we have it set up for donors or funders? So on our end, so the way how we have it is through university development and alumni relations. Not every student org has their own like master account in the sense like we can't create over 1,000 pages. But what we have done is under our office, the lead center, that's essentially the parent account. And then if you break it down, there's a clickable link that says a child account. So the child account is where it says student organizations. And then from there, you could even do this where you create a grandchild account, where the grandchildren account are basically all the different individual organizations that have a page in there. So we haven't by default created that, but kind of like on request as students need it, want it, whenever we do like big give campaigns or something, that's usually where we would have that. So students have the option of getting that, but it hasn't been like as widely like, hey, every org is entitled to this. It's not quite sustainable, but we do have those options for students that want it. So.
As we start to wrap up, I want to see if there's anyone else that has any creative and or successful fundraising ideas that might be good for the group to consider. Any more humble brags, if you will. Also, the flip side of that, if you have done anything that just didn't work, you maybe thought it was going to go great, and for whatever reason, it just did not pan out as intended. I think those examples, I don't want to like end on a low note, but I think those examples might be good for us to consider just in case there are any institutions in the room that might have some of those ideas in the wash, and maybe they can use your experience to alter their plans. So.
Well, hi, I'm Isabel. I missed the beginning of the presentation, but we do a whole variety of different fundraising things here at Stony Brook University with our student organizations. I advise all of the media and journalism groups. So it's a broadcast radio station, newspapers, and other things. And a couple of things that we're going to be doing are an online auction of some artwork. So we're looking into using Google Web applications to set up the online auction. And we did an Instagram live concert a couple of weeks ago. It was really a test to see how well it would work, where all the musicians directed people to the radio station's fundraising site. But we're going to do some more of those to see how they work out. And we did also do a couple of online streaming fundraisers where the musicians played and directed the funds towards the radio station. We have a direct outreach to donors in a good old fashioned paper mailing campaign, which we started doing again. And that's worked pretty well to bring in about $2,500 each time we do it, about twice a year. And, you know, just trying different things.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else have any other ideas? I'm just taking a couple final notes down. No? Okay. Well, with that, we can kind of leave it here. I feel like we covered a lot of ground in an hour, and I do want to be cognizant of time because I know we're about to go into a next session, and I want to give y'all a moment to use the restroom, grab some water, grab some lunch if you haven't. I haven't done that, so I need to take my own advice. I want to see if there are any objections to this continuing to be recorded. I think there's a lot of good content in here that could be beneficial to folks that weren't able to join us today. So I want to see if there's any qualms. If there's any issues with that, feel free just to send me a private message. Otherwise, we'll make this available to the masses. So thank you all so much. I know it's Friday, and talking about money stuff is hardly interesting any other day of the week, but especially Friday. So I appreciate you all joining and participating, and hope to cross paths soon.